Okay, hello. Welcome to Fat Mascara. I'm Jenn Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Garrett Muntz.
He's Garrett Muntz. This is a podcast about beauty culture. Hi, everyone.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going well with me. I don't know about our audience, but I hope it's going well with them too. Then you are like, they're getting a double dose of you. I think we had because of scheduling. I'm not going to see Julie again till next week or 2 weeks from now. So it's like double Garrett in a row without Jess. They're very lucky.
I feel so honored. But yeah, we all have crazy schedules these days. There's a lot happening. So it's always nice to fit this in when we can, right?
It is, says the man that's about to go off to Thailand. But we're not talking about that because nobody wants to hear about that. I want to hear about you inspiring the youth of America.
Oh my God. So last week I went to go speak at my friend's. So my friend is a principal at a high school in Jersey. Shout out Communications High School in Monmouth County, New Jersey. It's an awesome school. It's like I don't know if it's like a magnet school or some sort of, but it's from all over the county, and it's like a communications-focused school. So I went to speak at their career day. I was very honored that they asked me to speak. And it was great. I had such a great time. I was able to ask a few questions of the students. It was mostly like, juniors and seniors in like high school. So we're talking like 17, 18-year-old. And there were a few takeaways that I thought were really interesting. Not some that I wasn't super shocked at. I did ask all of them if they read any print magazines. Guess what the answer was?
Well, no.
No. Most of them were like, well, I read the ones that my parents get. And I was like, yeah, okay. Not surprised.
Did they know what Esquire was?
They do. I mean, they know, they were aware of what media brands were. They just don't read the print versions.
The paper version of it. Okay.
And unsurprisingly, they get all their news from TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, everything is TikTok. But one of the things that I thought was interesting is they don't even follow, A, they don't follow media brands on TikTok. B, they don't even really, none of them said that they really follow big influencers. They were much more into micro niche. And, they're like, we like to curate our own kind of group based on our aesthetics or how we identify, whatever. So they weren't really into like the Alex Earls of the world, like the huge, people that we're always talking about.
And are you speaking for like somewhat beauty? Did you ask them at all about that?
So the beauty part was interesting because I didn't get to talk to all of them about beauty specifically because each talk was only like 15 minutes. And I did 5, there was like a rotation of 5. But in one of them, I did get to talk a little bit about beauty, and specifically we're talking about celebrity beauty. And the ones that were talking to me in that grouping were like, we don't care at all about celebrities beauty. They're like, this one girl was like, I love rare beauty, but I love it because I tried it because someone recommended it to me before I knew that it was Selena Gomez.
Okay.
And then she was like, and then I found out, and I was like, oh, that's cool, but it wasn't like a selling point for her. And I was like, well, have you tried something like Rhode? She was like, I would never try Rhode. I just don't like Hailey Bieber, and there's no reason for me to.
If it's tied to the celebrity and they know who the celebrity is, then if they don't like the celebrity, forget about it. You're not getting a new customer.
Right. And part of it too, she was like, part of why I haven't tried Rhode is because I haven't wanted to buy it. And I was like, well, is that going to change now that it's in Sephora? And she was like, probably not.
So she does shop, this person does shop at Sephora.
Yeah, like that's where she buys her rare beauty. So I just thought it was very interesting that, like, we always talk about these celebrity brands and like driving the culture and all this stuff, but I was like shocked that none of them really cared about that.
Yeah, but I have to think of the business side of it, which is like, well, their investors cared. Like, how did they get all this cool products with custom packaging in a Sephora? Because they had all that money, and some of the investors for a while felt safer investing in Rare. Like, if Rare was by an unknown name, would it have had such a huge launch with all those SKUs, with money already to play with marketing and, you know?
Correct. But I think for me, what was interesting is that I think with these celebrity brands, we've kind of talked about this before, is that I think people assume that the draw is the celebrity, but it really boils down to the product. If the product is not good, it's not going to matter at all who's behind it or not. And that, generation we think of as like so engrossed in that celebrity kind of micro trend, like always buying the newest thing. But even there, like,
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So that was kind of refreshing to me, actually.
Did any of them have their birthday party at Sephora?
No, they were a little bit too old for that, I think.
Yeah. We actually got a bunch of voicemails from people. I'm going to play them next week when Jess is back because I want to keep collecting them and some younger people too, talking about that trend, that like how quickly it came about. Like people in their 20s are like, we weren't doing that. And I was a teenager, 6 years ago.
I loved you and Jess's conversation about it last week because I think her perspective as a parent is so important in that whole conversation, because there is such a thing about parent versus parent, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't really touch on that when we talked about it, but that's a huge aspect of this, I think, that we had kind of not talked about.
Especially now when parents are so involved in their kids' lives.
Totally.
In a way that love my parents, but they never were. And I didn't want them to be, but it's so different now.
Oh, yeah. No, it's fascinating. It's so funny to me that like such a kind of a small story has created like such a conversation.
It's been boiling though. I'm still interested in it. But it's cool that you were chatting with the youths.
I wish I had more.
Garrett's 40 now, so he has to stay in touch with youth culture by visiting them in their natural habitat.
It was funny. I was telling my friend Emily after, who's the, actual principal, I was like, this is the first time, A, I've been in a high school probably since I graduated. B, that I'm really around this many people that age. And I was like, I'm really impressed by how thoughtful they were and how they were all super smart. I wish that I had more time to talk to them and have more of a conversation.
This is so funny because our intern, Lexi, her next project she's working on is actually with Gen Alpha and bringing in some more voices from different generations. So listeners, stay tuned. And Garrett's just previewing that for us. Well, while you were busy, like, inspiring the youth of tomorrow, I was out here just getting my face injected with stuff.
Go on.
I haven't had filler in a year. And I think I'm that type. I think everybody sort of laid off filler for a little because people were like is it getting too plumped or whatever? And I started to see a new dermatologist and she was like, let me just see what's going on in your face. She didn't use an ultrasound to find out what's in there, but she had to get to know my face, I think. And she didn't want to like go in and start plumping things that didn't need plumping. So she did the filler on me for the first time she ever has. And mostly where she put it, which I thought you would think was interesting, was the back of my jaw. So
like your masseters?
Yes, but the reason she did it there was sort of to just like pull back the softness around my mouth, like, as you get saggier and droopier marionette. So like just putting a little bit on the edge of my jaw, it was almost like as if you went in the mirror and held up your jowls.
Oh.
Now, I was like, are you sure that's even going to make a difference? Because at this point, it's like, once you're starting to like lose elasticity, like it's saggy a little. I get that. I'm not expecting. And she was like, she said I was still at the point where like it would give it a little bit of a hold. So that's what she did.
I love that. I love that idea. It looks really good, I have to say. Your face does look is radiant.
Well, I do think she's also one of those, she injects Botox in a way that different from I've had before, which is a little bit of it in a lot of places. Like I have Botox all over my face right now. The forehead's in the 11s where you would expect the crow's feet. But then she did a little bit of like above my upper lip that kind of shortens that area. And then a bunch in my neck. Dude, she's going to town in my neck.
Like the tendons?
Yeah, like the platysma muscles that are ropey looking. That is one reason people get it. But the other reason, now, I wrote about this recently, but I don't think I've talked about it on the podcast. Have you heard of the Nefertiti neck lift?
Yes.
She doesn't call it that, but basically if you get Botox in certain muscles that pull downward on your neck, that softens them. And it has I'm not going to say like a spring back effect, but the jowls and jaw and lower face look more lifted. They call it a Nefertiti neck lift. So after she had done all this, I go back 2 weeks later. The way she does it is she puts your Botox in and then she wants to see you in 2 weeks to see if you need more anywhere. So she goes light first. She ended up giving me more. But I asked her, I was like, what was with all the neck stuff? And I told her Nefertiti. She's like, I don't call it that, but yeah, that's kind of what I was doing for you, which is just like reviving that lower half. So I like to be open with our listeners about all of it. So if you see me on the Instagram in those damn social video clips where I'm so close up and up in your face and ranting and raving in my Philly accent about the latest beauty news, I'm so sick of my face sometimes.
I think that's really like fascinating that way that she did it, though, because I found as a man, a lot of times my derm will place it kind of similarly to she doesn't fill my cheeks. Yeah, filler.
Yeah, not in the
it's
cheek,
more about
but further back.
Yeah, because it doesn't add that volume. It just like lifts it.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that for myself lately. I'm like, do I need a lower facelift?
What? I feel like we need music like, what operation is Garrett getting this week? You guys don't even know half of them because he texts me or he's writing about a story because he's trying a treatment, which we don't want to like have you scoop yourself. So we have to wait for it to come out into the media outlet of your choice. But if you do, I'm curious to hear how it works on a more masculine face.
Yeah, I mean, I also think, it goes along too with a lot of the conversations we've had around Ozempic and skin tightening and all that. When my weight fluctuates, like right now I'm leaner than I usually am, and so I notice a lot more sagging in my face.
Oh yeah.
Like when I smile and stuff. So I think that there's also, I sometimes will look in the mirror and I'm like, ooh, I need to I don't know.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Well, that's what I've been up to. We also have some news to talk about. I feel like we should just get into it. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're based in New York City, Garrett and I. New York Fashion Week just wrapped. And I find that over the years I've done the podcast, I've talked less about Fashion Week on it because it's such a visual medium. And as like TikTok and social media has risen, I'm like, that's where people are getting the news. But I still obviously look at all the trends because I'm like trying to think bigger picture. What does this mean for beauty? What does this mean for hair, et cetera? And of course, all our friends that are hairstylists and things, they're working at Fashion Week. The thing that came out of New York that I just could not stop seeing, and I don't know if do you go to shows or do you look at the photos?
I mean, as a former fashion editor and whose job it was to go to like every show.
Yeah.
I do not really do that much anymore because I'm so burnt out with if I never sit on a fashion show bench again for the rest of my life, I'll be happy. I do look at them because I think that they're important too, for our jobs. I think for men, it's a little bit less important in terms of trend aesthetic, like beauty trends.
Oh, right.
But I do think that they're a really awesome place to get ideas and to see people being really creative. And I think that they're really fun to look at.
I agree. I stopped going physically to the shows when I stopped working at print magazines because it was just like, I'd much rather sit in my house and get an even better view of everything.
Yeah.
But speaking of views, so I'm watching the models come down. First of all, they're all skinny again. Sorry to the body acceptance movement. That could not help but notice that. And I shouldn't gloss over that. That is an important thing. But really, I wanted to talk about the hair because all of the hair was very sculptural and interesting and big and swoopy. Couple examples. I'm not sure what to call this trend yet. Maybe as I tell you them, we can come up with a name. But Lacey Redway, who always does something sculptural and cool, at Christian Siriano, she did what she was calling trackside twists. So they were like these sculpted loops in the back. It was very cool. Helena Estrada did horns. It was like, guys, picture your hair center parted and then like you slept funny. So it was dented into little triangles on either side of the part. They looked like horns.
Like a Mugatu kind of thing from Zoolander?
Yes, but without the sculptural, just like if you did it with a flat iron. So it was just like a bend in the hair.
Oh, cool.
That happened to look Mugatu. Good reference. Thank you. Then there were these really structured bangs at Christopher John Rogers. That was hairstylist Sunny Molina. And Garen always does the most sculptural, cool things. At Anna Sui did, I didn't know this is what they were called because I had to look it up, but classic American pinup models and the hairstyle where it looks like
a Betty Page.
Like a bubble bang.
Uh-huh.
Not called a bubble bang, guys. Called a bumper bang is kind of what the trend is called, which I had never heard that. But that rolled bang in the front. And then I see this is on Grammys were happening around the same time. And there was all this news about the jellyfish haircut, which I'm not even going to do I even tell you what that is? Fine. It's a dumb name someone gave this style that Cher had back in the 70s, which was bangs, bob, long.
Right.
So 3
it's like the
layers.
graduated.
Yeah, but it's not like a curtain bang where it's a soft graduation. There's a harsh cut between the 3, like steps. Yeah. And then I also saw some people being like, that's not at all what that haircut's called. It's a very traditional Japanese style called the hime cut, which came out thousands of years ago. And I was like, oh yeah, I did see that in the TV show that I was watching that was based in ancient Japan. And they had that haircut with the half bang and the half bang.
So
anyway.
That's what Lady Gaga and Miley Cyrus had.
You got it. Exactly. Those were the 2. Did I say that? No, I didn't. That's why we love you. So I'm seeing all of this structure, all of this asymmetry, all of these styles. And you know what it made me think about? Things are feeling very 1980s in America right now.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
In so many ways. The excess, the conservatism.
Trickle-down economics.
And I was like, 80s is the last time I feel like hair was really something. People were spraying up their bangs. Salt and Pepper had their asymmetrical do. There was structure. But then in the 90s and thousands, it's sort of just nobody went and got a cut. There's no mullet. And then you're getting this. I remember in the 80s, me and my mom, every time I went to the hairstylist, it was now we'll try this. Now we'll try that. It was changed it up every month. But are you feeling this excess vibe in any beauty or wellness spaces that you're watching?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's this. I think what's so fascinating about what you were saying about beauty trends is that they are often reflective of a larger movement, right? And I feel like that's percolating as well. I mean, think about the corporate girl, structured suits, the shoulder pads are back.
Oh yeah,
it's all happening, and I feel like even at the Unilever trip last week, which we were talking about when I was there, Nexus's whole new push is for volume products.
Volume, yeah.
They taught us how to do a blowout with these products. The thing was see who can get the biggest hair. And I was like, this is the first time in a long time.
It's both the excess and the volume, but also in the not being afraid to shape the hair into ways that it doesn't naturally fall. I just feel like the hair was, for so long, has been natural waves and bedhead and just woke up like this.
Yeah, and I think part of it was in the 80s, the look, it was about having a done look.
Done, yeah.
Because it was about opulence and money and extravagance. And you wanted to look as rich as possible. So you had all the trappings, right? You had the big hair, the big colorful clothes. Think about all of the designers that were big back then. It was all about scale and color and proportion, excess, right? And we're coming back into that. I think you can see it in aesthetics. Yes, we've been talking about this movement
even
away
home
from
decor,
a done look.
Mirrored surfaces and some flashier kind of.
Yeah. I mean, people want opulence. It's so interesting that happens at times of inflation.
Yeah, right? And at times of the political power is a more conservative, yet the looks are less conservative almost in a way. I just think that dichotomy is so interesting.
I think it's fascinating.
Honestly, I haven't seen hair like that in New York, because New York's often very cool girl. And there were a lot of braids because a lot of the models had natural braids and then they would swoop them into shapes. And a lot of edges too, people are taking what would normally just be slicking your edges or doing little spit curl kind of things and really doing things with them. Just more of a personality.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, think about that. It's all about big nails, big makeup.
Yeah.
Color is back. It's all connected. I think that's really interesting.
Okay, moving on. This is such an opposite thing. This is why I love the beauty as a concept and this podcast, because we could go from New York Fashion Week, 80s excess, to important news in the world of B Corp, Dr. Bronner's. Dr. Bronner's is the most anti what we were just talking about kind of brand. You guys, if you don't know the name, you know it. It's the Castile soap with 10,000 words on the label that you can use for 10,000 things. very famously, I would say, liberal and socialist kind of values at that company. And they've been for a long time in a B Corp. Okay, so if you don't know what a B Corp is, there's this independent verification body called the B Lab, and they will take a company and look at their social and environmental performance, their transparency, their accountability to make sure everything's up to grade with ESG principles, that the stakeholders involved all get paid in a way that feels fair. And it's not just about making money, it's about doing good as you make money. So that's what a B Corp typically is. And some beauty brands you guys might know that are B Corp right now, Veleda, Ursa Major, Aesop, Davines. You get the vibes.
Yeah.
Well, so back in 2022, Dr. Bronner's and some other brands started making noise because B Lab certified Nespresso. And Nespresso is part of Nestle, and they had some issues with wage theft and abusive factory workers that were all verified and verified by Nestle, yet they still were able to get their B Corp certification. So basically what these brands were saying that already had B Corp were like, you're lowering your standards. If we're letting in brands like this that use oils that clear-cut forests in order to plant palm oils, that have issues with child labor, what is the point of B Corp anymore? So they made noise about it then, but then this week, the big news is Dr. Bronner's laid down the law. They were like, well, you guys are not, if you're changing, then we're not going to be a B Corp. And they pulled out and they said, you can have your certification. We don't want it anymore. What did you think when you saw that news?
I was surprised that they went that far, to be honest. But it also it really brought up some issues for me around all of these certifications, right? Like we constantly in beauty are talking about Leaping Bunny, EWG certificate, all of these different certifications that people can get. And for me, it was like, what did these mean? Like, B Corp is one of the most common.
And one of the hardest to get, honestly.
And one of the hardest to get, frankly.
And it's not just for clean and green. It's also for all those other things I was talking about.
Human rights, sourcing, there's a lot of factors. And I honestly didn't know how complicated it is to get a B Corp till I read why they were upset at them. I always thought it was just environmental, right? But it goes into human rights, all of it. Complete supply chain, everything. And I was like, okay, I mean, I get it. But I was also kind of like, they're saying that now brands can get it and it's kind of like greenwashing because the standards are lower, XYZ. And it's just another thing where people are like, I'm greener than you, I'm cleaner than you, I'm this, but like, by whose standards? Like, there's no regulating body. There's all these little ones, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you could be, Leaping Bunny, but not EWG and not a B Corp. But like, I'm a B Corp, you're not. I'm like, where does it end? Can there be just
every
one
time I think
thing?
They come up with a new certification because, people care now about wages. And they'll certify like, we're wages. There's always something different that people are going to care about. So I don't think there could be like one certification because like a one shopper might go in thinking, I just want fair labor practices. I don't know that that's like a beauty shop. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I can't imagine that that's what someone shops for, but fine. Another person might go in and be like, vegan, animal cruelty is what I care about first and foremost. Another person might say, I want no toxins for me. Another person might say, I want no toxins for the environment. Like, how do you verify? And it's so complicated. I actually spoke with the ESG person who's in charge of this at Amika, the hair brand. And we spoke at Nest's Climate Campus. They do an event every year for environmental practices. And she was explaining to me how difficult it is to get B Corp and how much money it costs because you have to go to your suppliers and ask them for information. And sometimes that costs extra. But I guess what Dr. Bronner's is not happy about is, and I think this is why they softened it, the supply chain stuff, people don't always know. So like a brand can do everything at their factory. Like we use solar, we're super environmentally friendly, all of our workers are taken care of. But they might get mica from somewhere through 3 people it goes through before it came from the mines, and they don't know what's going on the ground. And it's like the bigger question is it a brand's responsibility to know? And I kind of think yes.
I do think yes, but I also think you brought up a good point about how expensive it is.
That gets passed on to the consumer too.
Right. But also it means, it's like, just like in medicine and all that, it means that the large conglomerates are the ones that can afford to get this, whatever certification it is, or approvals or whatever. And it's interesting that their issue was brands like Nestle. And I mean, they also mentioned other large conglomerates that got B Corp. And I'm like, yeah, of course, because they can afford to pay.
They can hire one person who literally can track down all this information, put a whole person on salary, which big brands do have, where some of these small indie brands that are like some of the most nimble and environmentally friendly and safely packaged and great, just are like, we don't have the resources to even get that certification.
Yeah. I think that there's a certain percentage of consumer that does care about these things. But, we have this talk all the time with brands where their like main marketing hook is clean, right? And I'm like, I'm sorry, that's not enough anymore. That's table stakes for any brand. Also, it's like, what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. You need to define that. No one is defining a blanket standard for what those things are. So it's like from a consumer standpoint, we're all just like, oh yeah, is it clean? Great. But like, I think that that's not enough anymore to say that's a selling point for a product.
Yeah, for people like us who do this for a living, but I have a great facialist. She's coming on Friday, and she was talking about the brands that she used, and she was like, I like this one because they don't put in toxins. I didn't stop her because I know how people come to beauty in a different, everybody has their own version of how they've interpreted the data and whatever. But in my head, I was like, nobody's putting toxins. Literally, nobody's putting toxins at toxin levels in your beauty products. There are ingredients that have questionable studies that may be linked to hormone disruption or cancer, or that frankly, like the palm oil, just are clear-cutting farce and not great for the environment. But those aren't toxins, you know? But I think that word as well has just gotten to mean a blanket term for like a thing you don't want.
Yeah.
Because it's
quote,
so
unquote,
confusing.
Bad things. Yeah.
Yeah. I am disappointed by this, though, because for me, B Corp was always the one that was like the most stringent. And I use that myself just thinking like, okay, if it's B Corp, then I know they've got their ducks in a row. I know Dr. Bronner's is like the most extreme of all of them. So I'm not going to guess that all of B Corp has gone to shit and is just greenwashing. In fact, I was talking to someone who her job used to be as a consultant for companies to help them reach B Corp status. So she would come in and be like, okay, you have to clean up this and that. I can help you find a different supplier for this ingredient that's a greener supplier. And that was her job. And she said to me, like, still, it's the hardest certification you can get, especially for the environmental stuff.
Yeah. I think in that story, it said that like the average rating you have to pass B Corp is like an 80. Yeah. And Dr. Bronner's is like a 206. So they're already like so light years ahead of most companies. And that to me felt very social media echo chamber of like, okay, you're green, well, we're greener. And here's why we're greener. And we don't think that you should be part of this because you're not as green as us. And it's like, it made me want to kind of pull my hair out because I'm like, you guys are so far ahead. Like, can't you just be happy that more companies want to be a part of this and are making the effort?
That's a good point. That is a good point that like, and this is the other thing, the way B Corp does it, the numbers can get higher and higher. It's not like you start at 100 and if you mess up and say you use a bad ingredient or you don't pay people fairly, they knock off points. It's the other way. So every time you do something better for the company and the earth and the people that work there, you get more points, which is why it's not like on 100% scale, which I thought was interesting. So if that doesn't change, and sure, you can get a 280, let's just be glad somebody got to 80.
Right. No, totally. That's just in general. I think that's just like the world that we're living in now that's really driven by social media bubbles.
I hate always putting it on the consumer, though, because the ending thought I have on this is like, if it matters to you, you kind of have to do your homework. But I'm also like, modern life has gotten easier. Like, there's ways to do research on your own. And please, we sit in front of the TV for 2 hours a night. You could take 20 minutes of that to look up your brands and see if you're happy with it.
Or do it while you're watching TV. I mean, come on.
How about that? There we go. Multitasking. Anyway, Dr. Bronner's is always just like, they just push, and you know what? They always push people to do better. And I think it's interesting. And I'm glad that they're around and that they're successful because it shows people care about that stuff. Or they just really like the soap. Me and my family just really like the soap.
The soap is awesome.
Oh my God. The lavender Castiles in our shower. Always. And we do our whole house with Sal suds. Sal Suds is their like house cleaning one with pine. I don't know. The brand just it's quirky. I like it. Okay, moving on. Talk to me about doctors on Ozempic.
Okay, so I wanted to bring this up. This story is incredible to me. It's from the New York Times. It's a frothy, kind of funny story, but basically what it is talking about all these doctors, specifically cardiologists and diabetes doctors who are on Ozempic, and how now they're going to like conferences and they're all like, hey, you look so thin. So do you. Like, Ozempic. And I think it was really funny to me. And at first I read it and I was like, well, duh. Obviously, right? But then it got me thinking about our world. And I was like, thinking about how doctors, especially when you're talking about something from a derm standpoint, a plastic surgeon standpoint, but really any doctor, it's like you're kind of your own advertisement in a way, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it goes into our world. Like I feel sometimes pressure to look like a beauty editor, quite right? Or like when you're at a gym and you're like, that guy looks like a trainer. Or like there's this certain world that we live in where like your physical being endorses you somehow in a way. And it made me think about when I interview derms and plastics, one of my questions is always, what do you do?
Always.
Because it's like, if they do it, you know it's going to be good.
Same with products. I mean, that's a basic question you ask at the end of every interview. Like, well, what do you use? Because then you know, but what do you do? And I have heard of treatments, like certain newer treatments that the derms are like, oh, I'm using it on like other people right now. I haven't tried it yet myself. And I was like, I'm not getting anything a doctor's not doing to themselves.
Totally. If a doctor is not going to do it for themselves, it gives me pause, right?
Yeah.
Even if they've said, I tried it, it was not for me, but I think it would be good for you. If they've tried it, I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. But if they're like, I have never done this, I would never do it myself, but you should do it, I'm like, second opinion, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And that article was so funny because it was a little bit frothy, but what it came down to was the larger picture of you can tell which drugs, we were talking about treatments more, but also drugs, like things like Botox and things like that, are going to actually really be effective and big because of the doctors doing it. The other example they gave was statins, the class of drugs that lowers cholesterol. It was like immediately doctors started taking it and like it was a game changer. And I guess they're saying that the GLP-1s and Ozempic have hit that point where like, okay, this is really happening. This isn't a fluke. And everybody's not going to gain the weight back after, you know what I mean? It's not like the snack walls of the 90s.
Totally.
Like all those fad things we've had. My dad was on a weight loss drug in the 90s, like fen-phen.
Oh, fen-phen. It was like recalled.
Yeah, and then he had like heart conditions people had with it. And I remember I was like, wait, Dad, years later, I was like, weren't you on that? And he was like, oh yeah. And I was like, maybe that was not great for your heart. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact that so many doctors are taking Ozempic.
I think it's really interesting. And I'm not surprised, frankly. I think Ozempic is one of the most interesting medical advances we've seen in the last decade. And it makes sense that all these doctors would be, because also it's like, being a doctor has got to be really tough, right? Because you're advising people on their health and their well-being, but you're also a human being too. So like, you obviously have your own issues around your health. And so sometimes the way that you look isn't reflective of your knowledge or your level of care or whatever because of various issues that are just human issues, right? And so I do think it's an interesting thing that, like, I was thinking about this one doctor who was quoted, and he was like, it's even helped me stop drinking as much. There's been studies coming out now about how it can help with that, right? And I was like, that's really interesting.
And maybe even gambling, like other behaviors
Yeah, addictive behaviors, basically.
Addictive behaviors. I guess we'll see on that. By the way, not doctors. Just a little reminder here. Garrett and I play doctors on this podcast.
We're like enthusiasts. We're like doctor fans.
I'm just fascinated by like It's just something I love. Eric always, like, sometimes when we start talking this, he reminds me, he's like, I got into medical school. I was like, you need to stop saying that. That means nothing. You didn't go. You got into medical school. You are not a doctor. And I have another family friend, and she just calls herself Dr. Lipson. She works at the front desk at a doctor's office. But, like, you know, when you're around it, you think. But anyway, Garrett and I are not doctors. Do not take drugs unless you talk to your doctor. But we'll link to this article because it's also just really interesting to see that side of this whole story we've been talking about. All right, last thing we wanted to talk about before we raise some wands is the drama going on in the spa industry and the skincare industry because of P50.
You would think the world is ending.
The world is not ending. What is ending is Americans' access to Biologique Recherche P50 lotion, the 1970 version.
Which is the original.
It is the original. It was no longer available in Europe, by the way, as of, I feel like I wrote about that maybe 10, 15 years ago.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, so it has this ingredient, phenol, which was banned in the EU. It's an antibacterial, but it also can cause skin burns and eye damage in high doses. And it's just been phased out of almost every product that is a consumer product. And it was a matter of time before it was phased out of American products. But here we all like, I want clean. And they can't get their P50 1970 version, and they're freaking out.
I was at the Schaefer Clinic this morning, and I saw our friend Edita Jaros, who we've talked about before, the facialist. And I was like, girl, what's happening? She's like, people are flipping their lids. And it makes sense. It sucks to have your favorite product not available anymore, right? And that's a very popular, very iconic product that for years people have said is the only, the holy grail, whatever. I've used it before. I still use a version. I'm convinced there's, I think, 4 or 5 different versions of it now. There's
P50.
There's P50, there's P50V.
And for people
P50.
who are not familiar, how would you describe what this lotion essence is and what it does?
It's an exfoliating toner.
Thank you.
Basically. There's lactic acid in it. I think there's a cocktail of acids that are exfoliating. So you use it as an exfoliator, right? And people say it changes their skin. And there's this like really famous smell and the tingle and whatever. And I have some friends that were like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm like, frankly, you need to use a different one anyway. Because the thing is, I think people for so long, especially when it first came out, felt like in order for a skincare product to be working, it had to hurt, right? There had to be some sort of sensation. And this stuff is strong. Like, you will be red when you use it. It tingles. Sometimes
Can I just tell you about the first time I used P50? And I think it was the 1970 version. So I just went right in, baby beauty editor. Oh, it's whatever. The swelling that I got, immediately I got stinging and I was like, oh, interesting. And then hives, swelling, bright red, so hot. It took about 4 hours. I had to use ice packs. I got straight up hives that like then went down to my chest where I didn't put it. I know I have sensitive skin, but I could not believe how harsh it was. And it smelled so bad. And I felt like I had burned myself like an idiot. I was like, well, not for me.
That's wild. I mean, I feel like that's what people think it needs to do, though.
So people who like it, though, they just get a light tingle from it. They don't get like that. Obviously, if you're turning bright red and getting hives, the product's not for you.
Right.
But even that tingle, to me, says you're sucking away some moisture and you're causing some inflammation. Why else would your nerves be reacting?
Yeah, and when you're exfoliating, I mean, think about it. You're like messing up with your skin barrier. I don't know, like I've had so many different facialists recommend every single version of it to me over the years, and I've tried them all. And the one that I use now is the newest one, the PIGM 400, which is more for pigment. And it's the most gentle one.
Okay.
And that was the first one that I ever used that doesn't tingle, does not make me red, beet red.
Wait, tell me the name. Do they still call it P50 or they call it P something else?
It's P50 PIGM 400 It's so complicated.
So scientific. Yeah.
But it's basically like the most gentle version. And I don't even use it every day. I use it
And you use it to help with like pigmentation, like spots and things?
Yeah. I mean, I use it as my exfoliation, but it's designed to help with pigmentation issues. I also have rosacea, so my skin gets really red. But I had this one friend who sent me a photo of his face after he uses it, and his face was bright red. And I was like, don't use it.
Right. Oh my God, I was getting excited when you were talking. I was like, maybe I need that version. I know better. I know better. I've been doing this for years. It's not for you, Jenn. But like, it's got this cult status.
I feel like people just are overreacting for this perceived, like, my life is going to be different or worse because this is not available anymore. But I'm like, I don't know, but maybe this is the push that most of these people need to like use the right product.
Yeah. Also, I'll tell you, that stuff's not cheap. And I was talking to some dermatologists and looking around. I was like, what can people who loved P50, 1970 or another version use? 2 different people recommended. And then I actually have used this and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about witch hazel. So Thayer's, you know how they have a witch hazel, just pure witch hazel.
Yeah.
But they also have a 2% AHA version. So it's witch hazel as the base solution, but then you have the AHA, which are the alpha hydroxy acids, which are the exfoliants in P50. But in witch hazel, which is anti-inflammatory, which I think people forget because it seems like it's an astringent and it sucks away oil and stuff, but it is also anti-inflammatory. So it's not bad for your skin. And then it's $15.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put a link because like if you didn't try P50 or you need an exfoliating liquid and don't want to, Paula's Choice is great. They have a bunch of versions as well. But like if you don't want to pay for that, Thayer.
There's also the Pixie Glow Tonic is a really good dupe.
People, it's too harsh for me. I've tried that one.
Well,
I
that's
wanted
like
to
a lot
love
of
it.
glycolic. It's like 15% glycolic or something. There's a lot of glycolic in there.
Yeah, my skin cannot take it. I mean, I had acne up until like 31, I would say, but I was just using benzoyl peroxide because every time I tried, we didn't really have these as many options in the liquid exfoliants anyway.
No. The other one, I was just using one that I really like from Weleda.
Oh, they have a liquid exfoliant in their line?
Well, I don't know if it's technically an exfoliant. It's more of a toner. It's a pore refining toner, and it has witch hazel in it. And it's like witch hazel, tea tree, aloe, maybe I think like a sage extract in there. It's not, I don't think technically an exfoliant, but I really like, it's really good at if like you have blackheads or things like that. Yeah. It's just a nice little step.
That whole thing, pore refining, whenever something says pore refining, in my head, I'm always like, oh, so you dried out my face. Because I know what they're talking about. Like when you put the right kind of toner on, your face just like, it does that a little bit, and your pores do look smaller. I know the derms say they're not really getting smaller, but they just look that soft, blurred, matte finish kind of.
Totally.
And that's really nice as a base for makeup too. I get it. But is your barrier getting hurt in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, these days with my rosacea and stuff, I'm much more into like keeping everything intact and being as gentle as possible. And I think I hope more people think about their skin that way moving forward, especially after this P50 thing, because I do think that this idea that you have to be harsh on your skin to make it better is not the vibe.
I know. And we keep writing about it and talking about it, and yet people still love a burn.
I know. It's that psychosomatic thing of like, if it hurts, something is happening.
No pain, no gain.
Yeah.
All right, let's go raise some wands. Okay, it is time to raise a wand. So, our raise a wand today, we know her. She has called in to raise a wand before. I think you're going to recognize the voice. I'm just going to play it with it. Here we go.
Hey, it's NJ, nurse from upstate New York. I just wanted to raise a wand to a couple things. One is Makeup by Mario's setting spray is amazing. It just does something to your face, and certainly your makeup does last all day. In addition, the new Paula's Choice Collagen Peptide Moisturizer is also amazing and works great as a primer. I would like to ask 2 questions. Have you ever heard of herbal face food products, and what are your thoughts? And also G Beauty. Have you ever used any of their products? Would love to hear. My goal in life would be to be on your podcast. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my dog barking. Okay, all, take care.
Garrett, she has a name.
MJ, we love you.
MJ, welcome to the fam. I love how you just started talking as if you had said your name the last time, which you did not. You were just our nurse from upstate New York. So you're MJ. She's the one who told us about the Maya perfume oil last time. And she's, of course, gave me my new favorite saying, if you can't be good, be careful.
The best.
But I love when people ask questions on the line. So I wanted to look into this for you. She brought up 2 lines one of them I knew and I had looked into, but I'll just get into it to answer your questions. Well, also, thank you for the Paula's Choice Collagen Peptide Raisin. Excellent. But to answer your question about herbal face food. So yes, here's the thing. Herbal Face Food is one of those brands where they have sellers, social sellers, who get a percentage of the product when they sell it themselves. It's not an MLM, but it's that social selling model. And I'm often wary of like the word of mouth recommendations that come out of this, because you see this person on Facebook and they're raving about the product they love. And they're like, you can buy it from me, I'm a seller. And you're like, yeah, you're raving about it because you're about to make $5 off me when I buy it from you. So I'm always wary of that. The second thing about these products, MJ, that gave me pause, was their main product called The Cure contains, this is a quote, 50 different botanical extracts. I know that sounds great, but what that says to me is none of them are going to be at the clinically effective level, because getting 50 botanical extracts to play nicely in one serum, they're not potent. 2, allergies. Do you know how many botanical extracts people are allergic to? And this one has like random, there's carrot seed, there's lavender, there's cinnamon, it's just like everything in the kitchen sink. So I think it's just a lot of hype. It's also from a self-help author in Washington that like me, it's just kind of random. My last thing I'll say, because I don't want to diss it too hard because I have not used it, is their serum, their hero product, for 0.3 ounces. So 10 milliliters, which you're like, oh, 10 millimeters. Do the math. That's 0.3 ounces is $114. MJ,
That's
you can find
lot.
good skincare for less than that. That's like Augustinus Bader level prices. And that's a brand that has clinicals that they've published and before and afters, which this brand doesn't seem to. So I can't give it my stamp of approval. I'm sorry. But the other one you asked about, G Beauty, that I at least like that they're doing a more targeted skin concern. So each product has like this ingredient for this particular issue instead of like, it does everything. I think product like it does everything doesn't do it for me. However, I am wary of brands that hide who owns their domain. This is a little trick I have. If you go to a website, and first of all, they don't have like an about us story, you can't find out who the owner of the company is, and there's no legal disclaimer about the copyrighted information on the website. Red flag for me. Even more of a red flag is you can look up who owns each particular website, and there's these screening companies that basically you can pay so you can hide who the owner of the domain is. Anytime I've worked with a brand that has that, one of these pheromone beauty oils that I had to write about, I couldn't track down the people. I finally got a phone number. Turned out it was one of these companies in Florida. They're all in Florida for some reason, that basically hide the identity of who owns the website and the company from us. I'm sorry, if you're doing business, why would you be hiding?
What are you hiding?
What are you hiding? Like, what's the point? Isn't the whole thing that, like, we want brands to be transparent and authentic so we can trust the products they're making? So I don't know G Beauty. I don't want to diss the products themselves, but I just got like it's not a red flag, it's a beige flag for me on that one because of the fact that you can't figure out who owns this company.
I would be wary.
Right?
Healthily skeptical.
Which it sounds like MJ's a nurse. She's already a skeptic. She knows.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know your dream is to come on the podcast. Does it count that we've now played your voice twice? I feel like
and that we're like your biggest fans.
We are your biggest fans. We love you, MJ. But call us on our line. People have been calling to share their thoughts on birthday parties at Sephora. So you can do that because I'll be playing some next week. 646-481-8182. Or to raise a wand to product you love, like this Paula's Choice Peptide Moisturizer we just heard about. Or anything else you want. I don't know. Just say hi to Garrett and me, Jess, Julie, whatever. All right, let's raise our wands. Garrett and I text and put notes before we get on to do the show. I didn't want to ask about this because I'm so excited, but I have no idea what it is. Tell me everything. What are you raising a wand to?
Okay, so to allude to something that you said earlier, I had a procedure done last week that I've been in recovery for. I can't really go into it yet because it's still too early to talk about results and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, part of the recovery process of this procedure is lymphatic massage.
Okay.
And since I cannot afford or have time to get a lymphatic massage every day from someone, they recommended that I get this thing called a fascia blaster.
Guys, I'm going to find out what fascia is.
So I think that fascia blaster is actually like a trademarked tool, but I did not get the actual one. I got one of the other versions, which I will link to is from Amazon. $23, something like that. It looks like this.
Okay, describe that since we're audio.
It's like a handheld like handle that has these, on the bottom, it has these kind of like nubbins.
Yeah.
That as you run over your body are meant to mimic human fingers. But it's supposed to like break up your fascia. And like, it's so insane. I was like, this is not going to do anything. The first night I tried it, it feels so good.
Oh, it does. That looks like it's going to be firm when you rub that on.
Well, you're doing it yourself, so you can kind of adjust the pressure based on what you need. I mean, the first night, the area was pretty painful, so I was very gentle. And as time has gone on, I've gotten more and more firm with it. So basically, you need to use it with an oil. So like I put like a body oil on, and then I use it on the area. And it's so good that even my husband, who is not a beauty editor, right? So he's like curious, but not as into this stuff as I am. He was like, what's that? And I use it on his arm. When I tell you, his eyes rolled back in his head and he like started to drool. I was like, this thing is good.
So you can give yourself a massage. Like those look like little fingers. It's like not just kneading. You're getting like the...
Oh, yeah. And on each side, there's like this kind of like this nub. And if you can like dig it in, it's like, oh my God, I feel so good.
I bet on my neck, that would feel so good.
Like anywhere. I've now used it. I mean, the main area that I've been using is my flanks because that's where the treatment was. But I'm using it on like my neck, my traps, my arms, my legs.
I love your fascia blaster.
It is crazy. And it's like, I think one of the things that they say it's good for is cellulite, which I can't confirm if that's true or not because I haven't been using it for that purpose. But it just
I can confirm
great.
There is no physical thing that will get rid of cellulite, guys. You may look like you have less cellulite afterwards because you have moved along lymph and water and you have moved the fluids around so that the tightening bands of the cellulite are not looking as tight. So things look plumper and softer and you won't see the dimples. However, without surgery to snap those little bands with heat, you can't get rid of liposuction. I'm sorry. There's no topical lotion does it and there's no product that does it. I feel very comfortable saying that.
There we go.
I will say placebo effect is a lot, and people do work on cellulite, and they think they see a little bit. And that if that makes you feel good, then I'm all for it. But I do not like these companies that say reduces the appearance of cellulite because it does it for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I get that.
So what are you going to do? Go to the beach and quickly put it on before? Or you have a hot date with someone and you're about to get undressed and you're like, oh, I got a quick fascia blast and then put on my lotion and then I'm going to look good for 20 minutes and then we got to turn off the lights afterwards. But if that makes you feel good, do it. I just don't like people wasting money on that. However,
I hear you.
The benefit of the feel-good standpoint.
And from a lymphatic drainage standpoint, this works. It totally, my swelling is like basically like non-existent because I've been using this every night before bed. And it's so, I mean, as someone who has constantly crazy tight muscles at some place on his body, I use this and it's one of the best things I've ever used for that purpose. Just to release tension.
Simple. You didn't have to buy a big TheraBody that's pounding away on you. My husband has a TheraBody. When we turn that thing on, I like am embarrassed what the neighbors hear. It's a jackhammer. It is so loud.
Listen, I have all that stuff. I have the jet boots. I have every percussive gun you could think of. I have the travel ones.
It's the one we have is the percussive gun from,
I have it all. And this is still one of the best things
that?
I've ever used. $23.
Nice.
Or something around that.
Raise a wand.
I'm telling you.
It's a good
Raise a wand. The fascia blaster.
Well, while you're fashion blasting, you can light my Razor Wand if you want. So one of my favorite candles of all time is the Diptyque Bays.
Oof.
Do you know
Yes, of course.
the best places in New York, the best spas burn it. I've had it maybe a couple times. It's $76, so I don't buy it that often, but it's so good. I've got a dupe. Guys, I've got a dupe. Get it while it's hot because it was a holiday candle, which means I think it's limited edition, which means it might sell out soon. But as of now, it is still available on the website. Fleur, the perfume brand, PHLUR, has great candles, which I don't think I knew about until I saw the holiday ones. And I got one of the holiday ones and I was like, wait, the scent throw is amazing. The vessel is like a white ceramic, very simple. And so this particular candle, Fleur Candle in Currant Crush, it looks red and I thought it was going to be very holiday smelling. It smells like Diptyque Bays.
Ooh.
It's currants. So like you're like, oh, currants, they're so juicy and jammy. They're not. They're like kind of a fresh, juicy scent. It's not berry, doesn't read raspberry, any of that. It's like a very green, like a rhubarby kind of smell, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like an herbal sweetness.
Like an herbal, juicy, fruity smell.
Yeah.
And I would say it's a little bit more intense and juicy than the Bays candle, but I think people might like that because people that like Tom Ford Lost Cherry and that whole juicy vibe that's big right now, you're going towards there, but very much so if you burned this and didn't look at it, you might also think it's a Diptyque Bays. Shh.
That's awesome.
Best part is $30 less. It's only $45. And it lasts as long. Scent throw is good. It might even last longer. Because Diptyque burns slow. It's a good burn. So does this.
It does burn slow, but they're like kind of small compared to some other candles.
Yeah, no, this I have had. Here it is. Actually, here it is right here. What are we down to? We're down to like, she's been burning like for 2 weeks straight. And there's still like a good inch left in there.
I love that simple vessel too.
Yeah, the vessel's good, right? I got it dirty because I'm gross, but Currant Crush.
Do you reuse your vessels a lot?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked. They're all over the place. Like, look, see how I have, I don't know if you can see. Sorry guys, just bear with us. This is for me and Garrett, not for you. I have all those succulent plants up there.
Cute.
I would say half of those are old candle vessels.
That's awesome.
And then, I have it down to a science. I use the hot tea kettle water to like melt out the remaining, let Guggen sit in the middle, and then I pry off whatever the wick was. I just plant succulents in them, and they're all over my house. And Fleur makes a good one. Some of the other, just pretty much any brand. If it's, the glass ones I use for brushes. Wait, you think I was kidding? Practice what I preach. That's a candle. I think this was a Flamingo Estate.
Pretty.
You see it,
I love
right?
That. Yeah.
That was a candle.
Totally.
I don't think I've ever thrown away a candle vessel. They're just quite usable.
A lot of them are so beautiful. I feel guilty sometimes. I could be better about reusing my vessels.
It's a little bit of a headache to clean it out. I don't know. I'm your friend. Save them in a bag and just give them to me. I'll clean them all out for you. Maybe I'll plant like some seedlings from my plants in them. They're good to give as gifts because I'll do a cutting from my plants. People love getting a cutting from me because then it feels like you have a piece of the person.
Totally.
So I always bring that as like a little gift.
And then
you don't have to buy a vessel for it. There's no drainage on them, which is the thing about plants that's not great, but you could throw some stones in the bottom and that helps with drainage. Wow, yeah. I just turned it into a home ec podcast.
We're like a whole we're like going into like Tradwife, like home.
We are. Fat Mascara is a
homesteading.
Lifestyle. We're not just about beauty culture. We're a lifestyle, aren't we?
We're an omni-media lifestyle brand.
Exactly. Hear that, kids? All right, everybody. MJ would tell you to be good. If you can't be good, be careful. But Garrett and I say, get your beauty sleep.
Get your beauty sleep.
Get your beauty sleep.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
It's your reviews and feedback that help us make the podcast even better. Head over to iTunes to rate and review us, or email your thoughts to info@fatmascara.com.
We also want to answer your beauty questions and hear what products you love. To share a Razor Wand product review or to ask a beauty question, email us at info@fatmascara.
If you send it as a voice memo file, we can even share your voice on the podcast. You can also do that by leaving us a voice message. Our phone number in the United States is 646-481-8182.
Thanks so much for listening.